The conversation around the Yankees right now is becoming more and more interesting as the season begins to take shape. And one of the biggest topics that keeps coming up is whether the organization should start thinking long-term about some of its young talent earlier than expected. When a young player starts performing at a high level early in his major league career, the debate always begins about locking him into a long-term contract before his value skyrockets. Some people believe that if a player is already showing signs of becoming a star, the smartest move is to secure him early and avoid massive contracts in the future. Others believe it is too risky to commit big money to a player who is still at the very beginning of his career. This is a conversation that has followed many teams around baseball, and now it is starting to follow the Yankees again. The Yankees historically have not been the type of organization that rushes into long-term deals with very young players who have just arrived in the major leagues. They usually prefer to wait, evaluate performance over several seasons, and then make a big decision when the player is closer to free agency. This strategy has worked in some situations and backfired in others, but it is clearly part of how the organization operates. Even when fans feel like a player should be locked up immediately, the front office tends to stay patient. They want more data, more seasons, and more proof that the player can maintain that level of performance over time before making a massive financial commitment. There was a similar situation in the past with young players who started their careers very strong and looked like future superstars. At the time, many people believed the Yankees should offer long-term contracts immediately to secure those players at a lower annual value before their market price exploded. The logic was simple. If a player is producing like an all-star early in his career, then signing him long-term at a fixed annual salary could become a bargain in the future. Around the league, some teams do this very aggressively, especially smaller market teams that want to keep their young stars but cannot compete in free agency later. They take the risk early in exchange for potential long-term savings and roster stability. The Yankees, however, operate differently because they usually have the financial power to sign players later, even if the price becomes very high. That changes the way they approach contract extensions. Instead of taking the risk early, they often prefer to pay more later, but with less uncertainty about the player's long-term performance. It is a different philosophy, and whether it is the right approach or not is always debated by fans. Some believe the team misses opportunities to save money and secure core players early, while others believe avoiding risky long-term deals with very young players is the smarter move in the long run. Another interesting topic that has been discussed recently is the development of young players in the minor leagues and how the Yankees handle their prospects. Player development is extremely important because a strong farm system allows a team to remain competitive for many years without needing to sign expensive free agents at every position. When a team develops its own talent, it creates flexibility, depth, and long-term stability. The Yankees have been putting a lot of focus on building a stronger farm system over the last few years, and now some of those prospects are starting to get closer to the major league level. When a top prospect is performing well in the minor leagues, fans immediately start wondering when that player will be called up, whether he'll become a starter, or even whether he could be traded in a big deal for an established star. This is always a complicated decision for any team. Trading a top prospect can help a team win immediately, but it can also become a huge mistake if that prospect becomes a superstar somewhere else. On the other hand, keeping every prospect is not always possible either, because sometimes you need to trade young talent to improve the major league roster in areas of need. The Yankees usually try to balance these two approaches. They want to remain competitive every season, but they also do not want to sacrifice the future for short-term success unless the opportunity is truly worth it. That is why trade deadline decisions are always so difficult. If the team is competing for a division title or a playoff spot, the pressure to make a big trade increases. But if that trade involves giving up a very talented young player, the front office has to think very carefully about whether that move will help the team not just this year, but for several years in the future. There are always examples in baseball where teams traded young players too early and later regretted it when those players became stars somewhere else. That is one of the biggest fears for any organization. No team wants to be remembered for trading away a future superstar for a short-term upgrade that did not lead to a championship. Because of that, teams are becoming more careful with their top prospects, especially players who are very young and already showing a lot of potential. Age is a huge factor in these decisions, because a very young player still has so much time to develop and improve. That is why the Yankees often show patience with their young players, even when fans are calling for big trades or immediate promotions to the major leagues. Development is not always a straight line, and young players can go through ups and downs as they adjust to higher levels of competition. A slow start in the minor leagues, or even the major leagues, does not necessarily mean a player will not become great later. Baseball is a sport where adjustments, experience, and confidence play a huge role in long-term success, and organizations have to keep that in mind when making decisions about their young talent. As the season continues, another important discussion surrounding the Yankees is how strong the roster really is and whether the team actually needs to make a major move during the season. When a team starts the year playing well, the perception changes quickly. Instead of looking for urgent upgrades, the conversation shifts toward maintaining consistency, staying healthy, and making smaller adjustments rather than blockbuster trades. A strong start can completely change the strategy of a front office, because instead of trying to fix major weaknesses, the goal becomes reinforcing what is already working. Momentum in baseball is a very interesting concept because the season is extremely long. Teams will go through hot streaks and cold streaks, and the key is to avoid long losing streaks that can damage a season. Good teams are usually not the ones that never lose, but the ones that recover quickly after losses and avoid long stretches of bad baseball. Consistency over a long season is more important than short periods of dominance. Another topic that always comes up during the season is rule changes and how they affect the game. Baseball has made several adjustments in recent years to improve the pace of play and make the game more exciting for fans. Some people resist changes because they prefer the traditional version of the game, while others believe changes are necessary to keep the sport growing and attracting new fans. The balance between tradition and evolution is something baseball has always dealt with, and it will probably continue to be a topic of discussion for many years. What is clear is that the modern game is faster, more strategic in different ways, and more focused on athleticism, defense, and versatility. Teams are using more data than ever before, players are training differently, and front offices are making decisions based on both statistics and scouting. The game is constantly evolving, and teams that adapt the best usually have the most success over time. For the Yankees, the main goal remains the same as always: compete for the division, reach the playoffs, and try to win a championship. Everything the team does during the season, whether it is developing young players, making trades, adjusting the lineup, or managing the pitching staff, is focused on being at their best when the most important games arrive later in the year. The season is a long journey, and the teams that manage that journey the best are usually the ones still playing when October arrives. Another factor that will play a huge role as the season progresses is health. Every team can look strong on paper, but injuries are often what change the entire direction of a season. A team with depth can survive injuries much better than a team that relies heavily on just a few star players. This is why organizations today focus so much on building depth, not only in a major league roster, but also in the minor leagues. Having players who can step in and perform when someone gets injured is extremely important over a long season. Many times, the difference between a team that makes the playoffs and a team that misses them is not talent at the top of the roster, but depth at the bottom. Another interesting aspect of a long baseball season is how players adjust over time. Early in the season, pitchers often have the advantage because hitters are still finding their timing. As the season continues, hitters begin to adjust, study pitchers more, and improve their approach at the plate. Then pitchers adjust again. Baseball is a constant game of adjustments, and the players who can adapt the fastest usually become the most successful. This is especially true for young players who are still learning how major league pitchers attack them and how they need to adjust their swing, their timing, and their approach in different situations. Team chemistry is also something that people do not always talk about enough, but it can make a big difference during a long season. A team that enjoys playing together, supports each other during difficult moments, and stays focused during losing streaks usually performs better over time. Talent is extremely important, but chemistry, leadership, and clubhouse atmosphere also play a role in how a team handles pressure situations. When a season gets difficult, when the team loses a few games in a row, or when injuries happen, strong team chemistry can help keep everything together. As the months go by, the goals become clearer, the standings become more meaningful, and every series starts to feel more important. Teams begin to understand exactly what they need, whether it is another bullpen arm, another bat in the lineup, or simply better performance from the players already on the roster. The strongest teams are usually the ones that stay consistent, avoid panic decisions, trust their development system, and improve little by little as the season moves forward. But before we continue, please remember to join our channel and give this video a like. Your support allows us to keep bringing you the latest news about the New York Yankees. Feel free to share your thoughts on the news in the comments. The whispers have begun to echo through the corridors of the Bronx, and they carry a familiar name with renewed intensity: Gleyber Torres. In what is quickly becoming one of the most intriguing rumors of the current baseball landscape, sources close to the situation suggest that the Yankees have quietly opened conversations aimed at bringing Torres back into the fold for this season. While nothing has been officially confirmed, the mere idea of a reunion is enough to spark debate among fans and analysts alike. Torres, once seen as a cornerstone of the franchise's future, has experienced a career marked by flashes of brilliance and periods of inconsistency. Yet, it is precisely that untapped potential that seems to have reignited interest within the organization. Insiders hint that the Yankees front office is exploring strategic adjustments to reinforce their infield depth and offensive production, and Torres has emerged as a compelling option. His familiarity with the New York environment, combined with his ability to deliver in high-pressure moments, makes him an attractive candidate for a team with championship aspirations. Behind the scenes, the discussions are believed to be in early stages, with financial structure and role definition still under evaluation. However, there's a growing sense that this is more than just routine due diligence. The tone of the talks reportedly reflects genuine interest rather than mere contingency planning. For Torres, a return could represent an opportunity for redemption and resurgence. For the Yankees, it might be a calculated gamble on a player who knows the spotlight and has, at times, thrived under it. As speculation continues to build, one thing is certain. The possibility of Gleyber Torres wearing pinstripes again is no longer just a distant thought. It is a scenario gaining real traction, and one that could reshape expectations for the season ahead. That's it for this update. If you enjoyed the video and want to keep receiving exclusive news about the New York Yankees, please subscribe to our channel and give us a like. We always appreciate your comments and opinions. See you in the next video.